My palms were sweating as I shuffled down the narrow airplane aisle, the worn strap of my duffel bag digging into my shoulder. The recycled air felt too thin, carrying whispers of expensive cologne and the faint metallic tang of anxiety. Mine, not theirs. I'd never flown before, not once in my 25 years. Growing up in the foster system and then working paycheck to paycheck at a diner in Queens hadn't exactly afforded me many luxuries. "Excuse me," I murmured, trying to squeeze past a man in an expensive suit who barely acknowledged my existence. That's how it had always been, people looking through me rather than at me. I was background noise, wallpaper, the waitress you forget the moment she walks away from your table. The ticket in my trembling hand was my escape route. One way to San Francisco, where my childhood friend Mia had promised me a job and a place to crash until I got on my feet. Away from New York, away from the debt collectors, away from Eddie, the diner manager whose hands had started wandering when we closed up together. I glanced at my boarding pass again, the numbers blurring through fatigue and nerves. 7A. I scanned the row numbers, moving forward until I reached what I thought was my seat. The cabin light seemed brighter here, the leather seats wider, separated by actual armrests that didn't require passive-aggressive elbow wars with strangers. This must be it, I whispered to myself, sliding into the window seat. The leather felt buttery against my fingertips, nothing like the cracked vinyl booths I'd spent years wiping down at the diner. I allowed myself a small moment of satisfaction. The flight had been a splurge, but my entire life fit in one duffel bag and a backpack. I deserved this one comfort, didn't I? A flight attendant with perfect blonde hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes moved past, doing a double take as she glanced at me. I shrank into the seat, suddenly aware of my faded jeans and secondhand sweater. Maybe she could smell the desperation on me. Maybe she knew I didn't belong, but she continued past, and I exhaled slowly, focusing on the small screen embedded in the seat in front of me. I traced my fingers over it, marveling at the selection of movies and TV shows. I'd never seen anything like it. My phone was a prepaid model from 3 years ago, and my apartment had never had cable. The plane began to fill, the first-class cabin quieter than I expected. Men and women in tailored clothes moved with the confidence of people who've never had to check their bank account before making a purchase. I kept my gaze lowered, afraid someone would challenge my right to be there. Then I felt it. A shift in the atmosphere, subtle but unmistakable. Like the air pressure had changed, making my ears pop. The cabin seemed to go quieter, conversations falling to hushed murmurs. I didn't look up, not right away. Instead, I noticed the reactions around me, the slight straightening of backs, the curious glances, the sudden attentiveness of the flight attendants. He came into my peripheral vision like a storm front. Dark, imposing, inevitable. A tall figure in a perfectly tailored black suit that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. I caught fragments of him as he moved, strong hands with a heavy silver ring, broad shoulders that tapered to a narrow waist, dark hair cut close at the sides but longer on top. I dared a glance up and immediately regretted it. His face was arresting, all sharp angles and contrasts. High cheekbones, a strong jaw darkened with precisely maintained stubble, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed artificially lit from within. He couldn't have been more than 35, but authority radiated from him like heat. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, their watchful eyes scanning the cabin in continuous sweeps. They moved with military precision, one taking position at the front of the first-class section, while the other stood near my row, his hand never far from the inner pocket of his jacket. The man, I couldn't think of him as just another passenger, stopped at the row behind mine. I could feel his presence like a physical weight against my back, could smell the subtle notes of sandalwood and something darker, more primal. Power had a scent, I realized. And money. Real money, old money. Not the crumpled bills I counted every night after my shift. "Mr. Russo, can I get you anything before takeoff?" The flight attendant who had barely glanced at me now hovered attentively, her smile genuine and eager. "Water, no ice." His voice was deep, with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. Italian, maybe? It held the quiet confidence of someone who never needed to raise it to be heard. I shifted in my seat, suddenly aware of the mistake I'd made. I must have read my boarding pass wrong. This was first class. I belonged in economy, with the other struggling waitresses and minimum wage workers. Panic bloomed in my chest, but I stayed frozen, hoping that maybe, if I remained perfectly still, no one would notice me until after takeoff. Then I could explain the mistake to a flight attendant, away from curious eyes and judgmental stares. The plane was nearly full now. I opened my boarding pass again, squinting at the numbers. My seat was 17A, not 7A. I'd made a rookie mistake, mistaking the 1 for a smudge on the paper. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. I'd have to get up, walk past the imposing man behind me, endure the stares as I made my way back to my rightful place. Just as I gathered my courage to stand, the blonde flight attendant appeared at my side. "Excuse me, miss." Her voice was honeyed, but her eyes were cool. "May I see your boarding pass, please?" I swallowed hard, handing over the crumpled paper. She examined it, her perfectly shaped eyebrows rising slightly. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, heat climbing up my neck. "I made a mistake. My seat is actually 17A. I can move right away." She opened her mouth to respond, but another voice cut through the air like a blade. "Is there a problem?" The man, Mr. Russo, had risen slightly from his seat, his gaze now fixed on our interaction. Up close, he was even more intimidating. A scar traced a thin white line along his jaw, the only imperfection in his otherwise flawless face. "No problem at all, Mr. Russo," the flight attendant said quickly. "This passenger is just in the wrong seat. She belongs in economy." His eyes found mine, and I felt the impact like a physical blow. They weren't just blue. They were arctic, calculating, assessing my worth in microseconds. I should have looked away, but I couldn't. Something in that gaze held me captive. "Which seat is hers?" he asked, never breaking eye contact with me. 17A, sir." A slight furrow appeared between his brows as he glanced at the boarding pass in the attendant's hand. I noticed 3 other men in suits sitting sporadically throughout first class, all watching our interaction with unnerving intensity. "Who's assigned to this seat?" He nodded toward where I sat. The attendant checked her tablet. "It's currently unoccupied, Mr. Russo. We're not at full capacity in first class today." Something shifted in his expression. A calculation completed. A decision made. "She stays." The attendant blinked. "Sir?" "She stays right here," he repeated, his tone brooking no argument. Then, directly to me, "Stay right here. Don't move." It wasn't a request. It was a command, delivered with the absolute certainty that it would be obeyed. I felt the weight of it settle over me like a heavy blanket, both confining and oddly comforting. The flight attendant's smile tightened. "Of course, Mr. Russo. As you wish." She handed my boarding pass back to me with stiff fingers and moved away quickly. I clutched the paper in my hand, my heart hammering against my ribs. Why had he done that? Why would this stranger insist I remain in a seat I hadn't paid for? I wanted to turn around, to thank him or question him, but something in his demeanor warned against it. The plane began to taxi, and I stared out the window, watching ground crew in orange vests grow smaller as we pulled away. Behind me, I heard the soft murmur of voices, Mr. Russo speaking in low tones to one of his companions. I couldn't make out the words, but I caught my description being passed along. The knowledge that I was being discussed sent a shiver down my spine. "First time flying?" The question startled me. I turned slightly to find Mr. Russo leaning forward, his forearms resting on his knees. He'd removed his suit jacket, revealing a crisp white shirt stretched across broad shoulders. A gold watch gleamed against his wrist, probably worth more than everything I owned combined. "Is it that obvious?" I managed, my voice embarrassingly small. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You have a death grip on the armrests, and we haven't even taken off yet." I looked down at my hands, knuckles white against the leather, and consciously relaxed my fingers. Yes. First time, the plane aligned with the runway, engines growing louder. Mr. Russo stayed leaning forward, those blue eyes never leaving my face. "What's your name?" I hesitated. Every instinct warned me against giving personal information to strangers, especially ones who commanded attention like he did. But those same instincts also warned against refusing him anything. Eliza, I said finally. Eliza Collins. Eliza, he repeated, as if tasting the word. I'm Alessio Russo. You can call me Alex. The plane surged forward, pressing me back against the seat as we accelerated down the runway. My stomach dropped, and I instinctively gripped the armrests again. A low chuckle from behind me made my cheeks burn. It gets easier, Alex said, his voice somehow cutting through the roar of the engines. Just breathe through it. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak as the plane lifted off the ground. The sensation was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, my stomach floating somewhere near my throat as New York fell away beneath us. When we leveled out, I risked another glance back at him. Alex was watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, not with fear exactly, but with something adjacent to it, awareness perhaps, the awareness of prey in the presence of a predator who hadn't yet decided to hunt. Thank you, I said, finally addressing the elephant in the room. For letting me stay in this seat, I really did make an honest mistake. I know you did. There was absolute certainty in his voice. How could you possibly know that? He leaned back in his seat, but his eyes never left mine. People who are trying to scam their way into first class don't look like they're about to apologize to the oxygen they're breathing. A startled laugh escaped me. Is that how I looked? That, and like you might bolt down the aisle at any moment. The flight attendant approached with a tray of champagne flutes. Complimentary champagne for first class, she announced, her professional smile firmly in place. She offered me a glass with visible reluctance. I reached for it, hyper-aware of Alex's gaze tracking my movements. As my fingers closed around the delicate stem, I noticed a thin line of discoloration around my wrist where my sleeve had ridden up. A fading bruise, a souvenir from Eddie's parting gift when I'd given my notice at the diner. Alex noticed it too. His expression didn't change, but something deadly flickered in those blue eyes. Enjoy the champagne, Eliza. It's Dom Perignon. Probably better than whatever they serve in 17A. The flight attendant moved on to offer him a glass, which he accepted without looking at her. His focus remained on me, or more specifically, on my wrist, which I quickly covered by tugging down my sleeve. I sipped the champagne, the bubbles exploding on my tongue with a taste that was nothing like the $11.99 sparkling wine I'd bought to celebrate New Year's Eve alone in my apartment. It's good, I said inadequately. It should be, at $200 a bottle. He said it casually, without a hint of boasting. $200 for a bottle of alcohol. I could live for a week on that. I took another sip, trying to appreciate what might be my only chance to taste something so expensive. San Francisco, he said, nodding toward my boarding pass still clutched in my hand. Business or pleasure? Neither, really. I'm moving there. Fresh start. Running to something or away from something? The question hit too close to home. I stared into the golden liquid in my glass. Both, I guess. He made a sound of acknowledgement, as if my answer confirmed something for him. When I looked back, his eyes had softened marginally, though they lost none of their intensity. Sometimes both is the only answer that makes sense, he said. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence jostling us. My champagne sloshed dangerously close to the rim of the glass. Without thinking, Alex's hand shot out, steadying mine. His skin was warm, his grip gentle but firm. I froze, hyper-aware of the contact, of how long it had been since someone had touched me with any kind of care. Careful, he murmured, his fingers lingering for a heartbeat longer than necessary before he withdrew. First rule of first class, don't waste good champagne. Something about his touch, brief as it was, unlocked a floodgate of sensation. The exhaustion of the past weeks, of working double shifts to save enough for this one-way ticket, of sleeping with one eye open in case Eddie made good on his threats, of wondering if I was making the biggest mistake of my life, crashed over me in a wave. Thank you, I said again, meaning it for more than just the champagne. Alex leaned back in his seat, studying me with those unreadable blue eyes. One of his men approached, bending to whisper something in his ear. Alex nodded once, then dismissed him with a slight gesture. Get some rest, Eliza, he said, his voice somehow both a suggestion and a command. It's a long flight to the West Coast. I turned back to the window, watching clouds drift by beneath us. but I remained acutely aware of his presence behind me. A gravitational pull I couldn't explain or resist. I didn't know who Alessio Russo was, or why he'd taken an interest in me. I didn't know what would happen when this plane landed in San Francisco, where Mia was supposed to meet me at baggage claim. All I knew was that for the first time in years, someone had seen me. Really seen me. And despite all logic and reason, despite the warning bells clanging in my head, a part of me never wanted to be invisible again. I closed my eyes, feeling the gentle vibration of the plane beneath me, the soft hum of the engines, and the weight of a stranger's gaze on the back of my head. Whatever happened when we landed, I had 6 hours of sanctuary in a seat that wasn't mine, courtesy of a man who looked at me like he could read every secret I'd ever tried to hide. I must have fallen asleep, lulled by the steady hum of the engines and the champagne warming my blood. When I woke, the cabin lights had been dimmed, and a soft blanket covered me that I didn't remember requesting. I shifted in my seat, momentarily disoriented, before memories of how I'd ended up in first class came flooding back. Slowly, carefully, I turned to glance behind me. Alex was awake, the blue glow from his tablet illuminating the sharp planes of his face. He looked up immediately, as if he'd sensed my movement before I'd even made it. Our eyes met in the shadowed cabin, and something unspoken passed between us, a current of recognition, of awareness. "Sleep well?" he asked, his voice pitched low enough not to disturb the other passengers. I nodded, suddenly conscious of my tangled hair and the dried drool that probably marked the corner of my mouth. I wiped at my face self-consciously. "How long was I out?" "About 3 hours." He set his tablet aside. "You looked like you needed it." 3 hours of unguarded vulnerability in the presence of a stranger. I should have felt exposed, violated somehow. Instead, I felt oddly rested, as if for those 3 hours, the weight of vigilance had been carried by someone else. "I didn't order this," I said, lifting the edge of the blanket. One corner of his mouth lifted. "I did. You were shivering." The knowledge that he'd been watching me while I slept, close enough to notice me shivering, should have unnerved me. Maybe it was Stockholm Syndrome, or maybe just the lingering effects of genuine sleep, but I felt a flutter of something like gratitude instead. "Thank you. Again. I seem to be saying that a lot to you." His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in consideration. "You're not used to people doing things for you, are you, Eliza Collins?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. "No," I admitted. "Not really." "Why is that, I wonder?" It wasn't really a question, more like a thought spoken aloud. I shifted uncomfortably under his scrutiny. "Just lucky, I guess." He didn't smile at my attempt at humor. Instead, he leaned forward, closing the distance between us. "I think it's because you don't expect it. You've trained yourself not to." His insight was too accurate, too penetrating. I looked away, out the window at the endless black sky. "You don't know anything about me. I know more than you think." Something in his tone made me look back at him. He held up his phone, and on the screen was a social media profile. My social media profile. The few public photos I had, my employment history at the diner, the community college classes I'd taken in accounting before I'd had to drop out to work more hours. "What the hell?" I hissed, anger temporarily overshadowing my intimidation. "You looked me up? While I was sleeping?" He didn't seem the least bit apologetic. "I make it a point to know who I'm dealing with." "We're not dealing with anything. You're a stranger who happened to be on the same flight as me. A stranger who's apparently also a stalker." Something dangerous flickered across his face, a warning I was too incensed to heed. "Be careful, Eliza," he said softly. "There's a difference between caution and disrespect. I'm allowing one, not both." The implied threat, delivered with such casual confidence, doused my anger like cold water. I became acutely aware of the isolation of our position, 35,000 feet in the air, surrounded by his men, with nowhere for me to go even if I wanted to escape. "I apologize," I said stiffly. "I'm not accustomed to having my privacy invaded quite so thoroughly." He studied me for a moment longer, then nodded once, accepting my apology without offering one of his own. Tell me about San Francisco. You said you're meeting someone there? The abrupt change of subject left me scrambling. My friend Mia. We grew up in the same foster home for a while. She moved out west a few years ago, got herself settled. She's offered me her couch until I can find a place. And a job? You have prospects? I shifted uncomfortably. Mia says the restaurant where she works is hiring. It's nothing fancy, just a cafe near Fisherman's Wharf. But it's a start. A waitress. He said it flatly without inflection, yet I felt judged nonetheless. It's honest work, I defended. And I'm good at it. I'm sure you are. But is that all you want, Eliza? To carry other people's food and smile for their tips? The question stung, mostly because I'd asked it of myself too many times to count. What I want doesn't matter much. What matters is paying rent and keeping the lights on. A flight attendant appeared with a tray of refreshments, interrupting whatever Alex had been about to say. She served him first, naturally, setting down a tumbler of amber liquid that I assumed was expensive whiskey. "And for you, miss?" she asked, her smile now seemingly genuine. Whatever reluctance she'd shown earlier had vanished. I wondered what had changed, or what Alex had said while I was sleeping. "Just water, please." She handed me a bottle of water with a chilled glass. "We'll be serving dinner in about 20 minutes. Would you like to see the menu?" "Dinner. In first class." I tried to contain my surprise. "Yes, thank you." She presented me with a leather-bound menu that looked more appropriate for a 5-star restaurant than an airplane. When she departed, I opened it to find descriptions of dishes that made my mouth water. Seared sea bass with saffron risotto, filet mignon with truffle butter, roasted rack of lamb with rosemary juice. The diner where I worked served Salisbury steak that came frozen in plastic trays. "Recommendation?" Alex asked, noticing my overwhelmed expression. "I've never had any of these things," I admitted. Something like displeasure crossed his face. "Never?" I shrugged, trying to mask my embarrassment. Foster care isn't exactly known for its culinary experiences, and waitresses don't typically eat at places that serve. I squinted at the menu, pan-seared foie gras with fig compote. For a moment, I thought I saw genuine anger in his eyes, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "The lamb," he said decisively. "You should try the lamb, and the chocolate soufflé for dessert." When the flight attendant returned, I ordered as Alex had suggested. He chose the filet mignon, along with a bottle of red wine that made the attendant's eyebrows rise in appreciation. "That's an excellent choice, Mr. Russo. I'll decant it right away." After she left, I gave him a questioning look. "Is the wine special?" "It's a 2010 Chateau Lafite Rothschild, about $1,500 a bottle." I nearly choked on my water. "For wine? On an airplane?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I have particular tastes." The food, when it arrived, was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. The lamb was tender and flavorful, the sauce rich and complex. Alex insisted I try his filet, cutting a piece and transferring it to my plate with a smoothness that spoke of years dining in fine establishments. He poured wine for both of us, watching with evident satisfaction as I took my first sip. "What do you think?" he asked. I struggled to find words that wouldn't betray my inexperience. "It's complex. I taste fruit, but also earth and something almost like leather." He looked genuinely pleased. "You have a good palate. Most people wouldn't catch those notes on their first try." The praise warmed me more than it should have. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, the rich food and wine creating a bubble of luxury that made the rest of the world seem distant and unimportant. "Tell me about New York," he said eventually. "What are you running from?" I set down my fork, appetite suddenly diminished. "I told you. I'm looking for a fresh start, and I told you I know more than you think." His eyes dropped to my wrist, where the bruise had been visible earlier. "Who was he?" The question was so direct, so penetrating, that I couldn't muster a denial. "My boss at the diner, Eddie. He got the wrong idea about our relationship." Alex's expression hardened. "Did he touch you without permission?" I stared down at my plate. "He tried, more than once. The last time I fought back. That's when he grabbed my wrist. Said if I ever wanted to work in the city again, I'd stop being so frigid." I laughed bitterly, as if I needed more reasons to leave. I didn't look up, afraid of what I might see in Alex's eyes. Pity, perhaps, or worse, disgust. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, but with an underlying current of rage that made me shiver. Eddie who? The question was so unexpected that I glanced up. What? His full name, the diner's address. Give them to me. A chill ran through me. Why? Because men like that don't stop with one woman. Because consequences exist for a reason. His eyes held mine, unflinching, because I asked. I should have been frightened by the implications. Instead, I felt a dark satisfaction unfurling in my chest. Eddie Brennan, Murphy's Diner on West 34th and 8th Avenue. Alex nodded once, then tapped something into his phone before setting it aside. I didn't ask what he'd done. Some questions are safer left unasked. The dessert arrived, a perfect chocolate soufflé that collapsed with a sigh when the server drizzled warm chocolate sauce over it. Alex watched me take my first bite, his eyes tracking the movement of the spoon to my lips with an intensity that made heat rise to my cheeks. Good? He asked, his voice dropping an octave. I nodded, unable to speak around the rich chocolate melting on my tongue. A small sound of pleasure escaped me before I could stop it, and his eyes darkened in response. You should experience pleasure more often, Eliza Collins, he said quietly. It suits you. The air between us shifted, charged with something I was too inexperienced to name but instinctive enough to recognize. Danger and desire inextricably linked. I forced myself to break eye contact, focusing on finishing my dessert while my heart hammered against my ribs. When I glanced up again, Alex was watching me with the patient focus of a predator who knows its prey has nowhere to run. What do you do? I asked, desperate to steer the conversation to safer ground. For work, I mean. I'm an import-export, primarily high-end goods between Europe and North America. That sounds vague. He smiled, a genuine one this time that transformed his face from merely handsome to devastating. It is. Deliberately so. Are you always this mysterious, or am I special? As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Too bold, too flirtatious, too dangerous. But Alex didn't seem offended. If anything, his smile deepened. You are special, Eliza. More than you know. Before I could respond to that cryptic statement, one of his men appeared at his side, bending to whisper in his ear. Alex's expression shifted instantly, pleasure replaced by cold calculation. He nodded once, then turned back to me. Excuse me for a moment. He rose with fluid grace and moved to the front of the first-class cabin with his associate, their heads bent together in quiet conversation. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could read tension in the set of Alex's shoulders, in the controlled movements of his hands as he spoke. The flight attendant cleared our dinner trays, and I took the opportunity to visit the lavatory. Inside the surprisingly spacious bathroom, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My cheeks were flushed, eyes bright from wine and something else. Excitement, maybe, or fear. Both felt remarkably similar at that moment. What are you doing? I whispered to my reflection. This man is a stranger, a dangerous stranger. But that wasn't quite true anymore, was it? In the space of a few hours, Alessio Russo had seen parts of me I rarely showed anyone. My vulnerability, my anger, my pleasure. And I had glimpsed enough of him to know that whatever business he conducted, it operated in shadows deeper than I'd ever ventured. When I returned to my seat, Alex was back in his face a carefully composed mask of neutrality. But his knuckles were white where he gripped the armrest, betraying the tension he was trying to conceal. Everything okay? I asked cautiously. He glanced up, seemed to consider how much to say, then made a decision. A minor business complication. Nothing that can't be handled. By your employees. I nodded toward the men positioned throughout the cabin. Associates. He corrected smoothly. And yes. The cabin lights dimmed further, signaling that it was time for passengers to sleep during the overnight flight. Around us, people reclined their seats, donned sleep masks, settled in for the remaining hours of the journey. You should rest, Alex said. We still have a few hours before landing. I hesitated. I don't think I can sleep anymore, too much on my mind. He studied me for a moment, then reached into his carry-on and extracted a slim leather case. From it, he removed a book, a well-worn copy of The Great Gatsby. "Here," he said, offering it to me. "If you're going to be awake, you might as well have something to occupy your thoughts." I took the book, our fingers brushing in the exchange. "You carry literature in your carry-on?" "I find Fitzgerald to be excellent company on long flights." I opened the book carefully, noting the dog-eared pages and margin notes written in a strong, angular hand. "This is your personal copy." "Yes. And you're letting me borrow it." He tilted his head slightly. "Is that so strange? It feels intimate." His eyes held mine in the dimness. "Does that make you uncomfortable?" It should have. Everything about this situation should have made me uncomfortable. Instead, I found myself drawn deeper into whatever web was being woven between us. "No," I admitted. "It doesn't." He nodded, as if my answer confirmed something for him. "Good. Read, Eliza. I enjoy watching your expressions change as you think." It should have been a creepy statement. Instead, it made me feel seen in a way I'd rarely experienced. I turned my attention to the book, aware of his gaze on me as I began to read the familiar opening lines. But my concentration kept slipping, pulled away by the magnetic presence behind me, by questions that multiplied with each passing hour. Who was Alessio Russo, really? What kind of import-export business required armed guards on commercial flights? Why had he taken such an interest in me, a nobody waitress with nothing to offer someone like him? And most importantly, what would happen when this plane landed and the brief, surreal bubble of first-class luxury burst around us? After about an hour of pretending to read while my thoughts chased themselves in circles, I felt a light touch on my shoulder. I turned to find Alex leaning forward, his face close enough that I could see the faint stubble darkening his jaw despite the dim cabin lights. "Your mind is too loud," he said softly. "I can practically hear you thinking." I closed the book, keeping my finger between the pages to mark my place. "Sorry. Don't apologize. Tell me what's troubling you." I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "You." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Me?" "This." I gestured vaguely between us. "Whatever this is. I don't understand why you're interested in me. Men like you don't notice women like me. Men like me?" There was a dangerous edge to his voice now. "Wealthy. Powerful." I swallowed hard. "Dangerous." Instead of denying it, he smiled. A predator's smile, all teeth and no warmth. "And women like you?" "Invisible," I said simply. "Dispensable." Something flashed in his eyes, anger, but not directed at me. "You are many things, Eliza Collins, but invisible and dispensable are not among them." He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. His touch was light, almost reverent, but I felt it like a brand against my skin. "What if I told you that I saw you the moment you stepped onto this plane? That I watched you try to make yourself smaller, to apologize for the space you occupy? That I recognized in you something I've been looking for without knowing it?" My breath caught in my throat. I'd say that sounds like a line, a very good one, but still a line. He laughed, a genuine sound of surprise and delight that transformed his face yet again. "Fair enough. But what if it's true? Then I'd say you're either insane or dangerous, possibly both. And yet you're still here, talking to me instead of pretending to sleep." He had me there. I couldn't explain the pull I felt toward him, the sense that in the space of a few hours, my life had veered off its predictable trajectory into something unknown and potentially hazardous. "Maybe I'm the one who's insane," I said softly. The overhead speakers crackled to life, the captain's voice announcing that we'd soon begin our descent into San Francisco. The spell between us broke as the cabin lights brightened and flight attendants moved through the aisles, collecting trash and preparing for landing. I handed the book back to Alex, our fingers lingering together longer than necessary. "Thank you. It's one of my favorites." "Keep it," he said, closing my fingers around the worn cover. "A souvenir of your first flight. I couldn't. It's yours. It has your notes in it. That's why I want you to have it." His eyes held mine, intense and unreadable. something to remember me by, as if I could forget him, as if the few hours spent in his orbit hadn't already altered something fundamental within me. The plane began its descent, the change in altitude making my ears pop. San Francisco appeared below us, a sprawl of lights against the darkness, the iconic Golden Gate Bridge illuminated against the night sky. A new city, a new beginning. But suddenly, the future I'd been so desperate to reach felt hollow compared to the intensity of the present moment. What happens when we land? I asked, the question that had been circling my mind for hours finally escaping. Alex's expression gave nothing away. That depends on you, Eliza. On me? How? He leaned closer, his voice dropping so only I could hear him. When we reach the gate, you have a choice to make. You can go to baggage claim, meet your friend Mia, start your new life as a waitress by the wharf. He paused, his eyes never leaving mine. Or you can come with me. My heart stuttered. Come with you where? Does it matter? It should have. It should have been the only thing that mattered. Instead, I found myself considering it, considering walking away from the safe, predictable path I'd planned into something unknown with a man I'd just met. A man who radiated danger and secrets. You don't even know me, I whispered. I know enough. His certainty was absolute. The rest, we have time to discover. The plane touched down with a jolt, tires squealing against the runway. Reality came rushing back, my duffel bag with everything I owned. Mia waiting at baggage claim, the job she'd helped secure for me. The sensible future I'd planned so carefully. I can't just... You can. Alex interrupted. That's the beauty of it, Eliza. You can do exactly what you want. For once in your life, you have a genuine choice. The plane taxied to the gate, each second bringing me closer to a decision that suddenly felt monumental. Around us, passengers began gathering their belongings, phones lighting up as they reconnected with the world. But in our bubble of first class, time seemed suspended between one heartbeat and the next. Why me? I finally asked, my voice barely audible above the ambient noise of the cabin. Out of all the people you could choose, why me? Alex considered me with those penetrating blue eyes. Because when I looked at you, I saw someone who deserves more than she's been given. Someone who survived without becoming hard. That's rarer than you might think. His words struck something deep within me. A lonely, neglected part that had always longed to be valued for exactly who I was. You don't make offers like this to every woman you meet on planes, I said. It wasn't a question. I've never made this offer to anyone. The intensity in his voice left no room for doubt. This isn't a habit, Eliza. This isn't a game. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Around us, passengers stood, retrieving luggage from overhead compartments. Alex remained seated, waiting for my response, his stillness a counterpoint to the movement around us. If I say no? I asked, needing to understand the parameters of this strange situation. Then you walk away. No consequences. No regrets. He paused. At least, not on my end. The implication that I might regret refusing him hung in the air between us. The plane had reached the gate now, the gentle bump as the jetway connected, jarring me back to reality. I need to think, I said. Alex nodded once. Of course. He stood, and one of his men immediately appeared with his suit jacket. Alex shrugged it on with effortless grace, then reached for something in the inner pocket. He extracted a business card and held it out to me. My private number, he said as I took it. Available to you regardless of your decision today. The card was heavyweight cream stock, embossed with only his name and a phone number. No company, no title. Just Alessio Russo in elegant script. I slipped it into my pocket as passengers began to disembark. Alex's men moved with practiced efficiency, one leading the way while the others flanked him protectively. He paused in the aisle beside my seat, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. I'll wait for you at the exit to the secure area, he said. 20 minutes. After that, I'll assume you've made your choice. And then he was gone, moving through the cabin with the fluid confidence of a man accustomed to the world parting before him. I remained seated, fingers tracing the edges of his card in my pocket, heart hammering against my ribs. 20 minutes to decide the course of my life. I gathered my meager belongings. The backpack I'd stowed under the seat, the duffel I'd have to retrieve from baggage claim, the worn copy of The Great Gatsby he'd insisted I keep. These physical anchors to reality felt insubstantial compared to the weight of the choice before me. I made my way off the plane in a daze, thanking the flight attendants automatically. The terminal was a blur of lights and sounds, too bright and too loud after the cocoon of first class. I followed signs toward baggage claim, each step leaden with indecision. Mia would be waiting. Reliable, practical Mia who'd pulled herself up from the same foster system that had spat me out. Mia who'd offered me her couch, who'd spoken to her manager about hiring me, who represented safety and certainty. And then there was Alex. Dangerous, magnetic Alex who looked at me like I was something precious instead of disposable. Alex who offered an unknown future that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. I found myself stopping in the middle of the concourse, travelers flowing around me like water around a stone. What was I doing? What kind of person seriously considered abandoning a solid plan for a man she'd just met on a plane? A man who was clearly involved in something illegal, who traveled with armed guards, who could make flight attendants change their behavior with a word. I pulled out my phone and found Mia's number. I should call her, tell her I'd landed, that I was on my way to baggage claim, that everything was proceeding according to plan. Instead, I found myself opening her text messages, scanning our conversations from the past few weeks. Her excitement about my arrival, her descriptions of the apartment she shared with 2 other girls, where I'd be sleeping on a pull-out couch in the living room, the cafe job she'd lined up, minimum wage plus tips, just like the diner in New York, different city, same life. Was that really what I wanted? To trade one invisible existence for another? To keep surviving instead of living? I looked up at a departures board, the minutes ticking away, 15 left of the 20 Alex had given me. My phone buzzed in my hand, a text from Mia. Just parked, at baggage claim. Can't wait to see you. Guilt twisted in my stomach. She'd done everything right, been the kind of friend everyone should be lucky enough to have. And here I was, contemplating standing her up for a man who practically screamed danger. I resumed walking, heading toward the escalators that would take me down to baggage claim. This was insane. I'd known Alex for hours, not even a full day. Whatever I thought I felt was just a product of stress, exhaustion, and the surreal environment of first class. Halfway down the escalator, I stopped again. Below me, I could see the baggage carousels, crowds of people waiting for their luggage. I scanned the faces, looking for Mia's familiar features, and then I saw her. Short dark hair, oversized sweater, anxiously checking her phone. Mia, my lifeline, my safety net. She looked up, scanning the arrivals, hope written across her face. In that moment, I knew. I knew that if I went to her, if I accepted the life she was offering, I'd always wonder what might have happened if I'd chosen differently. I'd live with that question mark hanging over me. That road not taken. I backed up the escalator, drawing confused looks from other travelers, and hurried back to the main concourse. 10 minutes left. My heart raced as I retraced my steps, moving against the flow of passengers. I didn't know if I was making the right choice. Objectively, it was probably the wrong one, but it was my choice. Perhaps the first truly autonomous decision I'd made in a life defined by reacting to circumstances rather than creating them. I reached the exit from the secure area, where arriving passengers emerged to meet those waiting for them. And there he was, standing slightly apart from the crowd, his men positioned strategically nearby. Alex wasn't looking for me. He was on his phone, his expression serious, authoritative. This was a man accustomed to giving orders and having them obeyed without question. What was I doing? Before I could reconsider, his eyes lifted, scanning the crowd with the focused intensity I'd come to recognize. When he saw me, something shifted in his expression. Surprise, followed by satisfaction. He put away his phone and waited, not approaching, giving me the space to make my final decision. I walked toward him, each step feeling both terrifying and inevitable. When I reached him, I stopped, my duffel bag suddenly heavy on my shoulder. "You're here," he said simply. "I am. And your friend?" I swallowed hard. I texted her, told her something came up, that I'd call her tomorrow. It was a coward's move, I knew. Mia deserved better, but I couldn't bear to see her face when I told her I was abandoning our plans for a man I barely knew. Alex nodded, not commenting on my methods. Are you certain, Eliza? This isn't a decision you can unmake. The gravity in his voice should have sent me running. Instead, it anchored me. Whatever this was, he wasn't treating it lightly. I'm not certain of anything, I admitted, except that I'd regret walking away. Something like approval flashed in his eyes. He extended his hand to me, a simple gesture laden with significance. I hesitated only a moment before placing my palm against his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and secure. "Come," he said, "the car is waiting." He led me through the terminal, his men moving around us like a well-choreographed dance, one ahead clearing the way, others behind and beside us, creating a bubble of space in the crowded airport. People seemed to instinctively move aside, sensing something in their bearing that commanded deference. Outside, the cool San Francisco night air hit my face, carrying the unfamiliar sense of the bay. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows idled at the curb, a driver standing at attention beside it. Another identical vehicle was parked behind it. "Mr. Russo," the driver acknowledged, opening the rear door as we approached. Alex guided me into the back seat, his hand at the small of my back, protective, possessive. He slid in beside me, the leather seats impossibly soft compared to any vehicle I'd ever been in. His men dispersed to the other car, leaving just the driver with us. "Where are we going?" I asked, as the car pulled away from the curb. "My home," Alex replied. "Unless you'd prefer a hotel for tonight." The implication that there would be many nights ahead sent a shiver through me. "Your home is fine." He studied me in the dim light of the car's interior. "You're nervous. Wouldn't you be? I just upended my entire life plan to go home with a stranger." "Not a stranger anymore," he corrected. "But yes, I understand your apprehension. Ask me anything, Eliza, whatever you need to feel more at ease." I considered what I most wanted to know. "Are you in the mafia?" The bluntness of my question startled a laugh from him, rich and genuine. "You don't waste time, do you? I think we're past the point of dancing around things." He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "My family has interests in various businesses, some legitimate, some less so. We prefer to operate with certain traditions and codes of honor." It wasn't a direct answer, but it was confirmation enough. The man beside me was not merely wealthy. He was powerful in ways that existed outside normal society. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me, as if naming the danger had somehow neutralized it. "Why San Francisco?" I asked. "I would have expected New York or Chicago." "We have operations on both coasts," he said. "I oversee our West Coast interests. My brother handles the East, and these interests include," his lips curved into that not-quite smile, "import, export, as I said. Real estate, shipping, entertainment, banking." He paused. "Protection." The euphemism wasn't lost on me. I nodded, processing this information. "And where do I fit into all this?" His expression turned serious. "You don't. That part of my life remains separate from whatever develops between us. But your men, your security, they'll always be there, won't they? Watching." "Yes." No apology, no equivocation. "My position necessitates certain precautions." The car turned off the main highway onto a winding road that climbed into the hills. Through the windows, I caught glimpses of the bay far below, city lights reflecting off the water like scattered stars. "Is this the part where you tell me all the rules?" I asked, only half joking. "What I can and cannot do as whatever I am to you?" Alex's gaze intensified. "You're not a possession, Eliza. I don't want to control you. I want to give you opportunities you've never had before." "In exchange for what?" His hand found mine in the darkness, fingers intertwining. "Your company, your perspective, your trust. Eventually, it sounded too good to be true. People like him didn't just pluck people like me from obscurity out of the goodness of their hearts. There has to be more to it than that," I insisted. He was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "When I saw you on that plane, trying so hard to be invisible, to apologize for taking up space that was rightfully yours, I saw myself, not as I am now, but as I was once, before my father's position became mine, before I understood my worth." The revelation stunned me into silence. This man, who exuded power and confidence from every pore, had once felt as I did. It seemed impossible. I was 14 when my father brought me from Sicily, he continued, his voice taking on a distant quality. I spoke little English. The other children called me names, mocked my accent. I learned quickly to make myself smaller, to attract less attention. I tried to imagine him as that vulnerable boy, and failed. What changed? My father saw what was happening. He took me aside and said something I've never forgotten. You are a Russo. You bow your head to no one. Alex's eyes found mine in the darkness. The same applies to you now, Eliza. Whatever protection my name provides is yours. Whatever resources I have are at your disposal. You need never make yourself small again. His words filled a void inside me I hadn't realized existed. A desperate hunger for belonging, for protection, for the certainty that I mattered to someone. I don't know how to be that person, I admitted, the one who doesn't apologize for existing. You'll learn. His confidence was absolute. I'll teach you. The car turned through an imposing gate that opened automatically at our approach. Beyond it stretched a long, winding driveway flanked by carefully manicured trees. At the end stood a sprawling mansion. Modern glass and steel softened by natural stone, perched on the hillside with the bay spread out below it like a private kingdom. This is yours, I breathed, taking in the scale of the property. Ours, he corrected, for as long as you choose to stay. The car came to a stop at the front entrance, a massive glass door flanked by stone columns. Before the driver could exit, Alex raised a hand to stop him. One more thing, Eliza. His expression turned serious. My world can be dangerous. There are people who would use anyone close to me as leverage. If you stay, you accept that risk, and the protection that comes with it. It should have been the final warning I needed. The red flag too bright to ignore. Instead, it felt like honesty. The first truly unvarnished truth I'd been offered in a life filled with foster parents who pretended to care until the checks stopped coming, and boyfriends who claimed to love me until something better came along. I understand, I said. He searched my face, looking for any sign of hesitation. You can still change your mind. One word, and the driver will take you anywhere you want to go. I thought of Mia, probably still waiting at baggage claim, worried and confused, of the cramped apartment and minimum wage job that represented the sum total of my ambitions just hours ago, of the invisible life I'd been prepared to accept because I didn't believe I deserved more. I want to stay, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. Something like triumph flashed in Alex's eyes. He nodded once, then opened the car door and extended his hand to help me out. The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped from the car, my duffel bag pathetically small against the grandeur of the mansion before me. Alex's hand rested at the small of my back, guiding me toward the entrance. The massive door opened before we reached it, revealing a woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair, pulled into a neat bun. Her expression betrayed no surprise at my presence, just calm efficiency. "Good evening, Mr. Russo," she said, stepping aside to let us enter. "Sophia, this is Eliza Collins," Alex said as we crossed the threshold. "She'll be staying with us. Please prepare the blue suite." Sophia nodded, her dark eyes taking my measure with a single glance. "Of course, sir. Would you like dinner served?" I suddenly realized how long it had been since the meal on the plane. Hours had passed, and it was now well past midnight on East Coast time. Exhaustion hit me in a wave, the adrenaline of decision-making finally ebbing. Alex must have noticed because he shook his head. "Not tonight. Perhaps a light supper in Miss Collins' room, and have her things brought up." "Thing," I corrected automatically. "Just the one bag." Something flashed across Sophia's face. Surprise, perhaps, or pity, before her professional mask returned. "Right away, sir." She disappeared down one of the many hallways branching off from the enormous entryway. I took in my surroundings with wide eyes, trying not to gape openly at the luxury surrounding me. The foyer alone was larger than my entire New York apartment, with soaring ceilings and a chandelier that looked like it belonged in a European palace. The floors were polished marble, the walls adorned with what appeared to be original artwork. Through an archway, I glimpsed a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the twinkling lights of San Francisco below. This is... I trailed off, unable to find adequate words. Ostentatious? Alex suggested, a hint of amusement in his voice. I was going to say intimidating, I admitted. He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. It's just a house, Eliza. Bigger than most, certainly, but still just walls and floors and windows. Easy for him to say, I thought. He'd grown up in this world of wealth and power. To me, it was like landing on an alien planet where I didn't speak the language or understand the customs. Sophia reappeared. The blue suite is ready, sir. I've had Ms. Collins's bag taken up, and a light supper will be served shortly. Thank you, Sophia. That will be all for tonight. She nodded and withdrew, leaving us alone in the vast entryway. Come, Alex said. You're exhausted. Tomorrow is soon enough for a proper tour. He led me up a sweeping staircase to the second floor, down a hallway lined with more artwork. Modern pieces that probably cost more than I'd earn in a decade. We stopped at a set of double doors, which he opened to reveal what he'd called the Blue Suite. It was, in fact, a full apartment within the house. A sitting room with plush sofas and another wall of windows, a small dining area, and through an open door, I glimpsed a bedroom with the largest bed I'd ever seen. The bathroom is through there, Alex said, gesturing to another door. Sophia will have left everything you might need, but if there's anything else, just use the house phone to call down. I stood in the center of the room, my mind struggling to process this new reality. Just that morning, I'd been in my cramped New York apartment, counting pennies and worrying about making rent. Now I was standing in a mansion overlooking San Francisco, with a man who belonged to a world I'd only ever seen in movies. This is crazy, I whispered. More to myself than to him. Alex moved closer, his presence warm and solid in the unreality of the moment. It's a lot to take in. I understand that. Do you? I looked up at him, searching his face for any sign that he truly comprehended the vertigo I was experiencing. How could you possibly understand what this is like for me? Instead of taking offense, he considered my question seriously. No, he admitted finally. I can't fully understand. Your experience is uniquely yours. All I can do is try to make the transition as comfortable as possible. His honesty disarmed me. I'd expected platitudes or dismissal, not genuine acknowledgement of the gap between our worlds. I don't know how to be here, I confessed. I don't know the rules, the expectations. I don't even know what I'm supposed to call you. Alex, he said simply. Just Alex. And there are no rules, Eliza. No expectations beyond those of basic courtesy. You're not my employee or my subordinate. What am I then? He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek with surprising gentleness. My guest. For now. What comes next, we'll discover together. The tension between us shifted, electricity humming in the space where his skin touched mine. I was acutely aware of how close he stood, of the subtle scent of his cologne, of the heat radiating from his body. A knock at the door broke the moment. Alex stepped back, his expression carefully neutral as he called, "Enter." A young man in a black uniform wheeled in a cart laden with covered dishes. He set it near the small dining table, nodded respectfully to Alex, and departed without a word. "Your supper," Alex said. "I'll leave you to rest. You've had a long day." He moved toward the door, and panic suddenly flared in my chest. For all my uncertainty, the thought of being left alone in this strange place was somehow worse. "Wait," I said, the word escaping before I could consider it. "Will I see you in the morning?" He paused, turning back to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "If you wish." "I do." The admission felt more vulnerable than it should have. Something softened in his eyes. "Then I'll have breakfast served on the terrace at 9. Sophia will show you the way." He hesitated, then closed the distance between us once more. Slowly, giving me every opportunity to step away, he leaned down and pressed his lips to my forehead, a gesture so unexpectedly tender that my breath caught. "Sleep well, Eliza Collins," he murmured against my skin. "Tomorrow begins a new life for you." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and a future that had transformed completely in the space of a single day. I woke disoriented, sunshine streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows I didn't recognize. For a moment, panic gripped me. Where was I? Then the events of yesterday cascaded back in a rush of memories. The plane, Alex. The decision that had altered the trajectory of my life in a single moment. I sat up, taking in my surroundings properly in daylight. The bed was enormous, draped in linens so fine they felt like water against my skin. The bedroom itself was the size of my entire New York apartment, decorated in soothing shades of blue and cream. French doors led to a private balcony overlooking the bay. San Francisco spread out below like a miniature model city. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my reverie. "Yes?" I called, suddenly conscious of my rumpled appearance. Sophia entered, carrying a garment bag and a small tray with a steaming cup. "Good morning, Ms. Collins. I've brought you coffee and some clothing options." "Thank you, but I have clothes," I said, glancing at my duffel bag in the corner. Sophia's expression remained carefully neutral. "Of course. Mr. Russo merely suggested these might be more comfortable for breakfast on the terrace. The mornings can be quite cool here." She laid the garment bag on a nearby chair and set the coffee on the bedside table. "Breakfast will be served at 9, as Mr. Russo mentioned. The bathroom is fully stocked with toiletries, and there are robes in the closet. Will you need anything else?" The normalcy with which she treated this bizarre situation, as if it were perfectly ordinary for strange women to appear overnight in her employer's home, was somehow more disorienting than the luxury surrounding me. "No, thank you," I managed. Sophia nodded. "I'll return at 8:45 to escort you to the terrace." When the door closed behind her, I sipped the coffee, rich, dark, and perfectly prepared, while eyeing the garment bag with suspicion. How had Alex arranged for clothes in my size overnight? What else had he arranged while I slept, blissfully unaware in this gilded cage? Curiosity eventually won out. I unzipped the bag to find several options. A casual but clearly expensive sundress in pale yellow, designer jeans with a silk blouse, and a flowing pants set in soft blue linen. Each item still bore tags from high-end boutiques, and all looked to be exactly my size. I showered in a bathroom bigger than most hotel rooms, with a rainfall shower head and products that smelled of jasmine and sandalwood. Wrapping myself in a plush robe, I returned to examine the clothes more closely. Part of me wanted to reject these offerings on principle, to wear my own worn jeans and t-shirt as an act of independence. But another part, one I wasn't entirely proud of, yearned to step into this new world fully, to see if I could belong in it, even temporarily. I chose the linen pants and matching top, the most modest option, but still far nicer than anything I'd ever owned. They fit perfectly, the fabric soft against my skin, in a way that made my old clothes seem like burlap in comparison. Sophia returned precisely at 8:45, nodding approvingly at my appearance. "This way, Ms. Collins." She led me through the mansion's winding corridors, each room we passed more impressive than the last. Original artwork adorned the walls, and furniture that belonged in museums sat casually in living spaces. The scale of wealth on display was almost obscene, making me acutely aware of the gulf between Alex's world and mine. We emerged onto a sprawling terrace with panoramic views of the bay. A table had been set for two, white linen tablecloth billowing gently in the morning breeze, and there was Alex, standing at the stone balustrade gazing out at the water, his back to us. He wore casual clothes today, dark jeans and a light sweater that did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. He turned as we approached, his eyes sweeping over me with unconcealed appreciation. "Thank you, Sophia," he said, dismissing her with a nod before focusing entirely on me. "You look rested." "Did you sleep well?" "Like the dead," I admitted. "I think I was more exhausted than I realized." He pulled out a chair for me, the gesture oddly formal in the casual setting. The first day in a new place is always overwhelming. Add to that a cross-country flight and a life-changing decision. He let the sentence hang unfinished as he took his own seat. 2 staff members appeared, serving coffee and juice before presenting a breakfast spread that could have fed 10 people. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs prepared 3 different ways, bacon, smoked salmon, and dishes I didn't even recognize. "I wasn't sure what you preferred," Alex explained, noting my wide eyes. In my world, breakfast is usually coffee and maybe a granola bar, I said, trying to keep my tone light despite the stark reminder of our differences. Alex frowned slightly. That's not breakfast, Eliza. That's survival. I loaded my plate with fruit and a croissant, hyper-aware of my table manners. Did one cut a croissant with a knife in this world? I wasn't sure, so I tore off small pieces with my fingers, hoping it wasn't a faux pas. Thank you for the clothes, I said, after taking a sip of orange juice so fresh it must have been squeezed moments ago. Though I'm curious how you knew my size. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I have a good eye for such things, a useful talent in your line of work. I couldn't resist the small jab. Instead of taking offense, he seemed amused. In my personal life, perhaps. My professional associates rarely care if I can estimate their measurements. I laughed despite myself, some of the tension easing from my shoulders. Fair point. We ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, the view of San Francisco providing a stunning backdrop. Boats crisscrossed the bay, tiny from this distance, like toys in a child's bathtub. You have questions, Alex said finally, setting down his coffee cup. Ask them. I considered where to begin among the 1,000 queries crowding my mind. Why didn't you introduce yourself on the plane right away? You knew I was in the wrong seat from the beginning, didn't you? He nodded. I was curious to see what you do. Most people caught in that situation become defensive or entitled. You were neither. You were prepared to accept responsibility and retreat with dignity. So it was a test? An observation, he corrected. I don't play games, Eliza. What about your business? I chose my words carefully. Is that not a game of sorts, with rules and consequences? His expression turned serious. It's not a game when lives and livelihoods are at stake. It's a responsibility, one I take very seriously. And is that why you have men watching the house? I nodded toward the grounds below, where I'd spotted security personnel making rounds. Alex didn't seem surprised that I'd noticed. Yes. My position makes certain precautions necessary. Because of rivals? Or law enforcement? He studied me for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Both, at times, though we maintain mutually beneficial relationships with most local authorities. The casual acknowledgement of corruption should have shocked me. Instead, it felt like confirmation of how the world really worked. The powerful making their own rules while the rest of us lived by different standards. And what happens now? I asked, the question that had been circling my mind since I'd made my decision at the airport. With me, I mean. Alex set down his fork, giving me his full attention. That depends on what you want, Eliza. I can offer you many things. Security, comfort, opportunities you've never had before. What I can't offer is a conventional relationship because of who you are, because of what I am, he corrected. My world doesn't allow for normal courtships or predictable paths. Anyone close to me must accept certain realities. Security concerns, public scrutiny, private obligations. I absorbed this, trying to read between the lines. Are you saying you want me to be your... What? Girlfriend? Mistress? Something darkened in his expression. I don't use such terms. They're reductive and disrespectful. Then what am I doing here, Alex? I pushed, needing clarity. What do you want from me? Your company, he said simply. Your perspective. Your presence in my life, in whatever capacity evolves naturally between us. It sounded too vague, too convenient. And in return, you'll want for nothing. Your own space here, if you choose to stay. Education, if you wish to pursue it. A career path that interests you. Financial independence. The offer was so expansive it made me dizzy. Why would you do all that for someone you just met? Alex leaned forward, his intensity magnetic. Because I recognize something in you, Eliza. A resilience. An untapped potential. And because I'm in a position to offer opportunities that would otherwise be closed to you. Most men who approach women on planes aren't offering scholarships and careers, I pointed out dryly. He acknowledged this with a slight tilt of his head. I'm not most men. No, I agreed. You're not. A comfortable silence fell between us as I processed his words. Below on the grounds, I noticed more security personnel changing shifts, a subtle but constant reminder of the world I'd stepped into. I should call Mia, I said suddenly, guilt washing over me. She deserves a real explanation, not a cryptic text message. Alex nodded. Of course. Use the phone in your suite. It's secure. The implication that normal phones might not be secure was another reminder of the shadows surrounding his life. But before I could dwell on it, a man in a suit approached our table. I recognized him as one of Alex's security team from the plane. Mr. Russo, he said, his voice low. Antonelli called. The shipment at the docks needs your attention. There's been a discrepancy. Alex's expression hardened instantly, all warmth vanishing like a light switched off. He gave a curt nod, and the man retreated. I apologize, Alex said, rising from the table. Business requires my attention. Feel free to explore the grounds. The gardens are particularly nice this time of year. Sophia can show you to the library if you prefer to read. I should return by dinner. Just like that. He shifted from the attentive host to the businessman with pressing matters elsewhere. It was jarring to witness the transformation, to see the mask of civility slip, to reveal the power beneath. Of course, I said, trying to hide my disappointment. Your work is important. He paused, studying my face. Then, in a gesture that surprised me, he leaned down and brushed his lips against my cheek. I'll make it up to you, he murmured, his breath warm against my skin, and then he was gone, striding purposefully across the terrace, phone already at his ear as he issued instructions I couldn't quite hear. Left alone at the breakfast table, I felt suddenly adrift. What was I doing here, in this mansion overlooking a city I didn't know, with a man whose business I couldn't begin to understand? Had I made a terrible mistake? Trading one form of uncertainty for another, more dangerous kind? I finished my coffee slowly, watching the boats on the bay and trying to orient myself in this strange new reality. Eventually, I made my way back to my suite, following the path Sophia had shown me earlier. The mansion was quiet, the occasional staff member nodding respectfully as I passed. In my room, I found my phone charging beside the bed. Someone must have plugged it in while I slept. There were 17 missed calls from Mia, and a series of increasingly frantic text messages. Where are you? Eliza. I'm worried, please call me. Did something happen? Should I call the police? At least let me know you're safe. The last message had come just an hour ago. I sat on the edge of the bed, guilt washing over me in waves. Mia didn't deserve this treatment after everything she'd done for me. I picked up the suite's phone and dialed her number, heart pounding as it rang. Hello? Her voice was wary, not recognizing the unfamiliar number. Mia, it's me. It's Eliza. Eliza, oh my God. Where are you? I've been worried sick. I waited at the airport for hours, called hospitals, everything. I'm so sorry, I said, the inadequacy of the words painful. Something unexpected happened. What could possibly happen between getting off a plane and meeting me at baggage claim? Were you kidnapped? Are you okay? I almost laughed at how close to the truth her kidnapping comment was. Not literally accurate, but spiritually not far off. I'm fine, I promise. Better than fine, actually. I met someone. Silence on the other end, then. You met someone. On the plane. And what? Just went home with them instead of meeting me as planned? Put like that. It sounded awful. Irresponsible. Selfish. It's complicated, Mia. He's offering me opportunities I couldn't turn down. Oh my God, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Please tell me you didn't go home with some rich guy who promised you things. Please tell me you're not that naive. Her words stung because they contained a kernel of truth. Viewed objectively, that's exactly what I'd done. It's not like that, I insisted, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. He's a businessman. He wants to help me get established here, maybe go back to school. A businessman, she repeated flatly. What kind of business? I hesitated. Import, export, mostly. Mia made a sound of disbelief. Import, export. Right, and I'm the Queen of England. Eliza, do you hear yourself? This sounds like the setup to a cautionary tale they tell at women's shelters. Her concern was valid, If our positions were reversed, I'd probably be saying the same things. I know how it sounds, but I'm fine. I'm safe, and I'm sorry for leaving you hanging at the airport. That was unforgivable. Where are you now? Give me the address, and I'll come get you. I can't do that. Even as I said it, I recognized how it must sound to her. Can't or won't. Her voice had taken on an edge of anger now. Because if he's preventing you from telling me— No one is preventing me from doing anything, I interrupted. This was my choice, Mia. Mine. Maybe it's the wrong one, but it's mine to make. A long silence followed. When she spoke again, her voice was cooler, more controlled. Fine, it's your life, but not if, when this blows up in your face, my couch will still be available. Assuming you're not in pieces at the bottom of the bay. Mia. No, I get it. The waitressing job and cramped apartment weren't glamorous enough. You wanted the fairy tale. Just be careful what you wish for, Eliza. Not all princes are charming, and some castles are really prisons. Before I could respond, she hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand, her words echoing in my mind. Was she right? Was I being hopelessly naive? I moved to the balcony, gazing out at the spectacular view that now felt slightly tainted. In the distance, I could see the Golden Gate Bridge, shrouded partially in the city's famous fog. Somewhere beyond it was Mia's apartment, the life I'd planned, the safe choice I'd abandoned. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I opened it to find Sophia, her expression as professionally neutral as ever. Ms. Collins. Mr. Russo asked me to inform you that he's been delayed. He suggests you make use of the pool or gardens this afternoon, and he'll join you for dinner at 7. Thank you, Sophia. I hesitated, then added, Actually, I was wondering if I might see the rest of the house. I don't want to wander around lost. Something like approval flickered in her eyes. Of course. I'd be happy to give you a tour. For the next hour, Sophia guided me through the mansion, each room more impressive than the last. There was a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a home theater that rivaled commercial cinemas, a gym equipped with machines I couldn't even name, and an indoor pool in addition to the outdoor one I'd glimpsed from my balcony. Throughout the tour, I noticed subtle but unmistakable security measures, cameras in discreet locations, staff members who looked more like guards than household help, reinforced doors to certain areas Sophia politely described as Mr. Russo's private offices. By the time we returned to my suite, my head was spinning with impressions and questions. I thanked Sophia, who reminded me that dinner would be at 7 in the small dining room, small being a relative term in this house, I'd learned. Left alone, I explored my suite more thoroughly, discovering a walk-in closet that now contained not just the options Sophia had brought that morning, but an entire wardrobe of clothes in my size. Dresses, pants, tops, even nightwear and lingerie, all still with tags from designer boutiques. The gesture was simultaneously thoughtful and presumptuous. Alex had anticipated my needs, but also assumed I'd stay long enough to require a complete wardrobe. The realization left me with conflicting emotions, gratitude mixed with unease at being so easily provided for, as if I were a doll to be dressed and positioned in his world. I spent the afternoon by the outdoor pool, reading a book I'd borrowed from the library while trying to process the whirlwind changes in my life. The sun was warm, the view spectacular, and staff appeared periodically to offer refreshments or adjust umbrellas for my comfort. It was easy to see how one could become accustomed to this life, to slip into the role of the kept woman in the mansion on the hill, but Mia's warning nagged at me, along with my own misgivings about the source of Alex's wealth and power. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, I returned to my suite to prepare for dinner, my mind no clearer than it had been that morning. I was still adrift in unfamiliar waters, clinging to the life raft Alex had unexpectedly thrown my way, but one question remained, haunting me as I dressed for dinner in clothes that didn't feel like mine. Was I escaping one trap only to willingly walk into another? I chose a simple black dress from the new wardrobe, the fabric draping elegantly while remaining modest. My reflection in the full-length mirror startled me. I looked like someone else, someone who belonged in this world of wealth and power. The transformation was superficial, of course, but unsettling nonetheless. Sophia arrived precisely at 7 to escort me to dinner. She led me through the mansion's winding corridors to what she'd called the small dining room, a space that could comfortably seat 12, but had been set for an intimate dinner for 2. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the polished mahogany table, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city lights now twinkling in the dusk. Mr. Russo will join you shortly, Sophia informed me before disappearing. Leaving me alone in the imposing space, I wandered to the windows, watching as San Francisco transformed from day to night. Tiny pinpricks of light outlined the Golden Gate Bridge, and boats moved across the darkening bay like floating lanterns. It was breathtakingly beautiful, and so far removed from the life I'd known that it felt like a dream from which I might suddenly wake. I've always found that view therapeutic. I turned to find Alex standing in the doorway, still in business attire, but with his tie loosened and jacket removed. He looked tired, the perfect composure I'd observed earlier now showing faint cracks. "Rough day?" I asked. A shadow crossed his face. "Business complications. Nothing for you to worry about." He crossed the room to join me at the window, standing close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes taking in the dress with appreciation. "Thank you, though I can hardly take credit for it." I gestured to the outfit. This was in the closet, along with an entire department store's worth of clothes. "Do you disapprove?" he asked, watching my reaction carefully. "I'm just not used to people buying me things without asking, especially not entire wardrobes." "Would you have preferred to wear your old clothes? Or would you have preferred I take you shopping and watch you check price tags, calculating what you could afford?" His insight was uncomfortably accurate. I would have been painfully aware of costs had we gone shopping together, would have gravitated toward the least expensive options, regardless of whether I liked them. "No," I admitted, "but there's a middle ground between that and this." He considered my words, then nodded slowly. "You're right. I apologize for overstepping. I'm accustomed to solving problems efficiently rather than considering the emotional implications." His apology surprised me. Men like him, powerful, wealthy, used to getting their way, rarely acknowledged missteps. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate the gesture truly. It's just a lot to adjust to." He offered his arm, guiding me to the table where he pulled out my chair. The adjustment period is always the most difficult, for both of us. As he took his seat across from me, 2 staff members appeared, one serving wine, while the other presented the first course, a delicate seafood appetizer artfully arranged on Limoges china. "I hope you don't mind," Alex said. "I took the liberty of arranging the menu, but in the future the chef would be happy to prepare whatever you prefer." In the future. The casual certainty with which he spoke of my continued presence both comforted and unsettled me. "This is perfect," I assured him, taking a sip of wine that probably cost more than my monthly rent in New York. We ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, the food exquisite in ways I lacked the vocabulary to describe. Finally, I gathered my courage to ask the question that had been nagging at me all day. "Alex, what exactly happened at the docks today?" His fork paused halfway to his mouth, his expression instantly guarded. "Business matters. Nothing that concerns you." "I think it does concern me," I countered gently. "If I'm going to be here, in your home, in your life, shouldn't I understand what that life entails?" He set down his fork, studying me with those penetrating blue eyes. "There are aspects of my business that are better kept separate from our personal relationship." "For my protection?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "Yes," he said simply. "The less you know about certain operations, the safer you are, both from external threats and from legal complications." Legal complications. The euphemism hung between us, a reminder of the shadows that surrounded his empire. "I'm not asking for trade secrets," I said, "but if I'm going to make an informed decision about staying here, I need to understand who you really are. Not just the man who enjoys Fitzgerald and drinks $1,000 wine, but the one who makes people nervous when he walks into a room." Alex was quiet for so long I thought he might refuse to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured, controlled. "There was a shipment arriving from Sicily. Specialty goods that pass through specific channels to avoid excessive taxation and regulatory hurdles." He paused, choosing his words carefully. Someone attempted to renegotiate terms after delivery. That required my personal attention. I read between the lines easily enough. Smuggled goods. Attempted extortion or theft, a response that had required the boss himself to intervene, likely not with polite conversation. "Did you hurt anyone?" I asked, the directness of my question surprising even me. His expression remained impassive. "I resolved the situation." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I'm prepared to give." His tone wasn't unkind, but it made clear that particular line of questioning was closed. The staff reappeared to clear our plates and serve the main course, a perfectly cooked steak for him, herb-crusted salmon for me. As they worked, I noticed the heavy silver ring on Alex's right hand had a small scratch that hadn't been there at breakfast. I didn't comment on it. When we were alone again, Alex changed the subject. "I've arranged for a car and security detail to be at your disposal, should you wish to explore the city." "My own security detail?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "Is that really necessary?" "Unfortunately, yes. My position makes it necessary to take precautions with anyone close to me." He took a sip of wine. "But they're discreet. You'll hardly notice their presence." Somehow I doubted that. "And the car? Let me guess. Bulletproof?" He didn't smile. "Yes." The matter-of-factness of his answer was sobering. This wasn't a game or a movie. It was his reality. And now, by extension, mine. "I spoke to Mia today," I said, changing the subject to something that had been weighing on me. "She thinks I've made a terrible mistake." Alex's expression remained neutral. "That's understandable. From her perspective, you abandoned carefully laid plans to go home with a stranger." "She used the phrase 'in pieces' at the bottom of the bay," I admitted. That drew a slight smile from him. "Your friend has a vivid imagination, or a realistic assessment of how these situations usually end." I met his gaze directly. "Can you honestly tell me her fears are completely unfounded?" He set down his wine glass, giving me his full attention. "What I can tell you is that you are under my protection now. That means no harm will come to you, from me or anyone else, so long as you remain here." The way he phrased it sent a chill down my spine. Protection implied danger, and "so long as you remain here" carried an implicit warning about what might happen if I didn't. "Is that meant to be reassuring?" I asked. "It's meant to be honest." He leaned forward slightly. "I won't insult your intelligence by pretending my world is without risks, but I can promise that within it, you are safer than you've ever been." The irony wasn't lost on me. Safety in the shadow of danger. Protection from the very man others feared. "And if I decided to leave?" I asked, the hypothetical hanging between us. Something darkened in his eyes. "Are you planning to?" "I'm trying to understand the parameters," I clarified, "whether this gilded cage has a door that opens from the inside." For a moment, anger flashed across his face, quickly controlled but unmistakable. "This is not a cage, Eliza. You're free to leave anytime you choose. I would provide you with the means to establish yourself comfortably elsewhere, ensure your security, and wish you well." I studied his expression, looking for any sign of deception. "Just like that? No consequences? Just like that?" His voice was steady. The only consequence would be the opportunities lost, for both of us. The tension between us eased slightly. I took another bite of the perfectly prepared salmon, considering his words. If what he said was true, then I truly did have a choice: to stay in this world of luxury and danger, or to walk away with more resources than I'd had before. The staff returned to clear the main course, serving an exquisite chocolate dessert that melted on my tongue. As I savored it, a thought occurred to me. "What about Eddie?" I asked. "At the diner. You had me give you his information on the plane." Alex's expression remained carefully neutral. "What about him? Did you do something?" He took a deliberate sip of wine before answering. "Eddie Brennan no longer manages that diner. He's decided to pursue opportunities elsewhere, quite far elsewhere, and he's developed an unfortunate case of broken fingers that will make grabbing women's wrists difficult for the foreseeable future." I should have been horrified. Instead, a dark satisfaction settled in my chest. "You had that done for me? Someone you just met?" "I had it done because men like Eddie deserve consequences," he corrected. That it benefited someone I found interesting was a happy alignment. The casual way he spoke of violence was a stark reminder of who he truly was beneath the polished exterior. Yet I couldn't summon the moral outrage I should have felt. Eddie had hurt others before me, and would have continued had someone not stopped him. "Thank you," I said finally, surprising myself with my sincerity. Alex nodded once, accepting my gratitude without comment. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as we finished dessert. His recommendations for places I might enjoy in the city, books from his library he thought I might like. After dinner, he suggested a walk through the gardens, now illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of roses and the distant salt tang of the bay. Security personnel maintained a discreet distance as we strolled along stone pathways between carefully tended beds. "I've enrolled you in classes at the university," Alex said casually, as if he were commenting on the weather. "Starting next semester. Business administration and accounting, if I recall correctly from your previous coursework. Unless you'd prefer something different." I stopped walking, stunned by the presumption. "You what?" He turned to face me, apparently surprised by my reaction. "I thought you'd be pleased. You mentioned wanting to finish your degree." "On the plane, yes, but that doesn't mean you get to make those decisions for me without asking." Understanding dawned in his eyes. I've overstepped again." "Significantly?" I confirmed, crossing my arms. Instead of becoming defensive, he considered me thoughtfully. "You're right. I apologize. I'm used to efficiency. Seeing a need and addressing it immediately. People aren't problems to be solved, Alex. I appreciate the intention, but I need to make my own choices." He nodded slowly. "I understand. The enrollment can be canceled if you prefer to handle it yourself, or change to a different program if accounting no longer interests you." His willingness to acknowledge the error and correct it softened my irritation. "Thank you. And it's not that I don't want to go back to school. I do. I just need to feel like I'm building my own life, not having one constructed for me." "A fair distinction," he acknowledged. "I'll try to be more mindful of it." We resumed walking, a comfortable silence falling between us. The gardens opened onto a terrace overlooking the city, where a stone bench offered a place to sit and admire the view. Alex guided me there with a gentle hand at the small of my back. "Despite my missteps," he said as we sat, "I hope you're not regretting your decision to come here." I gazed out at the twinkling lights of San Francisco, considering the whirlwind changes of the past 36 hours. "I don't regret it," I said honestly. "It's overwhelming and sometimes frightening, but also exhilarating." "Exhilarating," he repeated, satisfaction evident in his voice. "I like that." He was sitting close enough that our shoulders nearly touched, his presence both intimidating and magnetic. When he turned to face me, his expression had softened in the moonlight, making him look younger, more vulnerable. "I want to kiss you, Eliza," he said, the directness of the statement stealing my breath. "May I?" The formality of the request was oddly touching. This powerful man who could arrange violence with a phone call, who commanded fear and respect in equal measure, asking permission for something so simple as a kiss. Instead of answering with words, I leaned toward him, closing the distance between us. His lips met mine with surprising gentleness, the contact soft and questioning at first, then more insistent as I responded. His hand came up to cradle my face, fingers tangling in my hair as the kiss deepened. I'd been kissed before, of course, but never like this, never with such focused intensity. As if the world had narrowed to just this moment, just this connection. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless, my heart racing in my chest. Alex's eyes were darker now, pupils dilated as he studied my face in the moonlight. "You continue to surprise me, Eliza Collins." "Is that good or bad?" I asked, my voice slightly unsteady. "Very good," he assured me, his thumb tracing the curve of my lower lip. "Predictable is boring, and you are anything but boring." We stayed on the terrace for another hour, talking about everything and nothing. My childhood in foster care, his early years in Sicily, books we'd read, places he'd traveled. With each exchange, the strange man from the plane became more real to me, more human, despite the dangerous power he wielded. When the night air grew too cool, he walked me back to my suite, his hand clasped warmly around mine. At my door, he paused, his expression serious once more. "I have to leave town for a few days," he said. "Business in Los Angeles that requires my personal attention." Disappointment washed over me, surprising in its intensity. "When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning, early." He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch lingering. "The house and staff are at your disposal while I'm gone. Sophia will help with anything you need, and your security detail will remain in place." I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. "How long will you be gone?" 3 days. 4 at most." His hand cupped my cheek. "Will you be here when I return?" The question carried weight beyond its simple words. He was offering me an opportunity, a grace period to consider my decision without his overwhelming presence influencing me. "Yes," I said, surprising myself with the certainty I felt. "I'll be here." Relief flickered across his face, quickly masked. "Good." He leaned down, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Sleep well, Eliza." As he turned to go, I caught his hand. "Alex?" He looked back, eyebrows raised in question. "Thank you for seeing me when I thought I was invisible." Something profound moved behind his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. He raised my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. "Thank you for allowing yourself to be seen." After he left, I stood in the doorway of my suite, watching his retreating figure until he disappeared down the corridor. In the space of 2 days, my life had transformed completely, from a struggling waitress fleeing a dead-end existence to whatever I was becoming in Alex's world. I didn't know what the future held, couldn't predict where this strange, intense connection might lead. There would be challenges ahead, cultural gaps to bridge, power dynamics to navigate, shadows from his business that might threaten to engulf us both. But for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen. Valued not for what I could do or provide, but for who I was beneath the armor I'd built around myself. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure, this newfound visibility. As I prepared for bed in my luxurious suite, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. Cheeks flushed, eyes bright with something that looked remarkably like hope. The woman staring back at me was familiar, yet changed, standing at the threshold of a life I'd never imagined possible. Tomorrow, Alex would leave for Los Angeles, giving me space to explore this new reality on my terms. I would walk the grounds of this mansion that might become my home. I would read in the library, swim in the pool, perhaps even venture into the city with my assigned security detail. And when he returned, we would begin writing whatever story lay ahead of us. A story that had begun with a mistake, a wrong seat on a plane, and those commanding words that had changed everything. "Stay right here. Don't move." Words that had led not to captivity, as they might have suggested, but to the first truly free choice I'd ever made. I slipped between silk sheets, the events of the past 2 days replaying in my mind as sleep began to claim me. Whatever happened next, whatever complications, dangers, or joys awaited, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was exactly where I wanted to be.